Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television, where we keep you updated with the happenings on the papers. Do well to drop your comment and your views, as they are always welcome. On the show, I will be doing this program alongside Rachel Tamsi. Good morning,
Morning,
Rachel.
Celia.
How you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Thank God it's
Thank God it's
Friday.
Friday.
All right, let's go through the papers, and we would love to start with the Daily Times newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, why fuel queues persist, Pengassan president is giving reasons. ICPC warns against undermining Supreme Court judgment on local government autonomy. Angry Chinese investor seizes another jet from Nigeria in Canada. Federal government to persecute foreigners funding banditry for economic sabotage. The big story on the paper, federal government won't tolerate subversion of democratic government. Says laws of the land have made copious provision on how to deal with treasonable acts. Tinubu congratulates Justice Ariwola on successful public service career. To swear in Justice Ariwola's successor today, approves 10 billion naira grant for DSO. COAS orders investigation into alleged killing of 3 locals in cattle in Kaduna. We have a picture where we can see National Emergency Management Agency officials conducting a critical assessment of water levels at the entry point of River Benue in Bakin Kogi community, Yola North local government area in Adamawa State on Thursday. This happened yesterday, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, Nigeria must adopt Opara model to prosper, coming from Ozodima. Imo Cross River Governors win Michael Opara Award. You can read detail of that on page 27. Senior lawyers urge new Chief Justice of Nigeria to clean rot in the judicial system. Ariwola out Kikiru Eku in. Yesterday, we had for the Chief Justice passing, stepping down, or actually, reaching the age for him to actually step down. You can read detail of that on page 6. Federal government funding of education for below AU UNFPA stipulation. You can find detail of that in the paper. This is coming from ASU. Wando finally $783 million acquisition of Nigerian's Agrip Oil Company. Police rescue 19 kidnapped victims, arrest 123 suspected criminals in 2 months in Enugu State. Shiroro mines killing. Federal government warned embassies to monitor nationals' activities. You can find that on page 28. Sub Matawali harassment of opposition leaders in the North, PDP tells Tinubu. Flying to Heathrow, airpeace missed 2 submission deadlines coming from the ACRML, saying Nigeria, UK, BASA has zero influence on slot allocation. Downside of the paper, 4 killed, 6 missing in Kanu boat accident, 5 kidnappers nabbed in Imo State. As well, we have 2 picture story. One is the operative of the Ibadan Zonal Command of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Oyo State, preventing protesting lawyers from their premises yesterday. And the second here, British military donate counter-terrorism training facility to the Nigerian army. You can read that on page 5. And that's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On Daily Independent, BPP blocks shady procurement processes, saves 1.7 trillion naira in 13 years. Presidency lists how it will determine allocation of 2025 budget. Owando completes $783 million Nigerian Agrip Oil Company acquisition deal. The big story on the paper, Tinubu's government won't tolerate subversion under any guise. Statement from the federal government says present administration has clear mandate of the people. Bandits seeking to take possession of mining areas coming from the Minister of Solid Minerals, Aleke. Federal government unveils national plan to combat non-communicable disease in Nigeria. Pengassan blames weak distribution chain for persistent fuel queues. 6 #EndSARS protesters regain freedom in plea bargain deal with Lagos government. NNPC explains OVH acquisition, says as commercial entity, it is devoid of political interest. Adopt Opara's leadership model. and Prosper Uzodinma urges leaders. Sacked Benue APC ESCO drags Ganduje-led NWC to court over dissolution. Army orders probe into killing of Kaduna villagers by soldiers. Still on the paper, 16 trillion naira needed to complete project inherited by Tinubu's government. Tinubu to swear in Justice Kudirat Kekere-Okun as CGN today. And that's all the news on Daily Independent newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, Ogu pays 100 million naira to 86 retirees. You can find out on page 3. 4 things you didn't know about the soon-to-be sworn-in Chief Justice of Nigeria. You can find what those things are on page 3. Again, which is the big story, Chinese firm takes over another Nigerian jet in Canada. You can read that on page 9. 2024 CIBN Annual Conference to spotlight Africa's economy future with over 10,000 attendees. Court restrained APC chairman secretary from conducting World Congress in Rivers State. Fidelity Bank, LASPAC joined forces to plant 20,000 trees in Lagos State. You can read that on page 6. We have a picture story. You can do well to grab the paper and read detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Nation newspaper, Minister Asu to meet Monday over strike threat. Budget 2025 to focus on essential projects. The big story on the paper, no room for subversive moves, federal government warns. We have copyright agency seizes suspected pirated books worth 50 million naira in Lagos. OVH acquisition, a business decision, says NNPCL. Then we have at the downside of the paper, police officer 7 others locked in battle for Osun Town 2. Details can be found on page 27. First Lady gives 1.85 billion naira grant to 37,000 women petty traders. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
Right, let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. Nigerian trade surplus rises by 145% to $8.26 billion. State House 2025 budget will be on actual requirements. This is coming from the presidency. Pay rise, we have the NBA asks judges to revive the public trust. That is to say, as we are paying you well, please do well to gain the trust of Nigerians. You can read detail of that on page 9. Algeria's police summon. Here we are having Obi caution federal government as NUPEC put oil workers on red alert. Detail found on page 8. The big story, hashtag end bad governance. Release detained protesters now. This is coming from Onyeyaka Ariwa Youth and the CSO, with some writers following that story here saying, arraign or release protesters before August 25th or face legal action. Falana tests the federal government, says adequate notice must be given suspects to enable them contract the NBA families for defense. Resolve to defend cases filed against protests by two state FCT. As the NHRC to investigate killing of 22 protesters, and we have over 30 lawyers coming to court for 27 protesters. Condemn ill treatment of detained protesters, and we have UNESCO call for protection of journalists covering protests nationwide. You can read detail of that on page 5. Here we have this picture story where we can see the NAOC hands over access to Owando. Detail can be found inside the paper. And on Sport 2024, we are looking at Team Nigeria arrives Paris, promise podium performance. You can read detail of that inside the paper. As well, we have federal government mulls differential tariff to stimulate demands. Power Minister is saying that. You can find that story on page 20. And that's all on the Vanguard newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, Emir of Ilorin Lut Abdul Razak's leadership style. Chinese firm seizes another Nigeria's jet in Canada. We have trending reaction trails new passport fees numbers. Federal government planning to invest $100 billion annually. Both trends and numbers can be found on page 2. The big story on the paper, Northern elders fret over kidnap and killing of monarchs. Condemned mother of Sir King Gobir. Situation worrisome, says Abbas and Governor Aliyu. North must find solution to insecurity now. Sheikh Husani made that statement. Details can be found on page 4. Tinubu swears in Kekere Ekun as CJN today. Details can be found on page 4. Nigeria's 9.2 trillion naira 19-month petrol subsidy surpasses 8.15 trillion naira spent in 16 years. All details can be found on page 11 in a picture story where we can see the group chief executive Owando PLC Wale and Chief Operating Officer General Director of Natural Resources Brusco at the signing ceremony for the acquisition of the Nigerian Agip Oil Company in London, United Kingdom yesterday. And that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper coming from Kaduna State, COAS orders investigation into alleged killing of 3 herders and 100 cattle. Detail found on page 7. And then looking at just where we have communities apprehend kidnapper over 1.5 million naira ransom on minors. You can find detail of that inside the paper. And on business, Naira shows mixed performance against dollar amid market volatility. On the parametrics, we have win goal, get $15,000 and not charges the athletes that will be participating. You can read detail of that in the paper. As police awaits Ajero on alleged treason, federal government warns against subversive acts. Lon Ariwola on retirement, with the rider plans to charge narrative in justice sector. Kekere Eku steps in today as the new Chief Justice of Nigeria, data found in the paper. 2025 budget will be based on neat assessment, says Bajabia Mila. You can find that in the paper. Terrorists kill 13 in Niger. Tinubu mourns slay Sokoto monarch. Northern coalition blasts Sokoto government and police lawn Mba over kidnappers. Then you can find that on page 7. Police nab woman for allegedly using hot iron on teenager. And this is really very bad. We've had the issue of this abuse on minors and teenagers and children, and I just hope that NAPTEC will take this over. We can have even the social welfare coming in to look at what is really happening concerning that. Detail found on page 9. We never invaded churches. This is coming from the army. You can read why they're saying that on page 6. Need come to blacklist managers of failed insurance firm. Detail found on page 19. Downside of the paper, Dangote refinery may face production delay amid testing phase. Detail found in the paper. We have the picture story here where we can see the Minister of Work, Senator David Umahi, and the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Yakubu Adam, during a ministerial news conference to mark the minister's 1 year in office in Abuja. And here we have a cross-section of judges of the Supreme Court during a valedictory session in honor of the retired Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, at the Supreme Court in Abuja yesterday, Thursday. And that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, Dangote refinery begins petrol production test run. Tinubu cuts short France trip, swears in CJN today. NNPC directors' expenses jump by 21.4%. This is a report, rather 214%. The report, you can find details on page 21. LP denies APC alliance 1.6 billion naira offer. APC campaign built on lies, says PDP. The big story on the paper, landowners sue federal government over 15 trillion naira Lagos Calabar highway. Umahi vows to continue a project, insists government paying compensation. Federal government rules out new roads in 2025, plans to complete existing projects. Minister writes Finance Ministry over SSANU NASU withheld salaries. 6 #EndSARS protesters freed after 4 years detention. Bandits kill 13 Niger farmers, alleged leaked information. More details can be found on page 11. And we have a picture story where we can see the about to be signed in CJN of Nigeria. That's Justice Kekere Ekun, and alongside other stakeholders during the book launch of the outgoing, or rather retired, Chief Justice of Nigeria, the book titled Judging with Justice. This happened in Abuja yesterday, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
All right, let's see what the Guardian newspaper looks like. Insurgents in the northeast, where we're seeing thousands in deer strain as support dry up in border town. Here we're seeing the pictures to the humanitarian funding as well as what is happening at the IDP camp, and we're seeing that see the queue looking at people who are depending on some of the funding coming in, and we can really tell. I mean, yesterday we saw supplement being sent in by UNICEF not getting to the children,
Yeah.
and you and I can actually testify what is happening in most of our IDP camps. They do not have the basic facilities that they need, basic amenities that are needed for them to be there. Talking about their health, they are not well taken care of. We've had cases of them even being raped while in the IDP camp by certain officials that are supposed to be the ones taking care of them, and then even their feeding is very, very poor. And no wonder these people sometimes would prefer to go back to their own farmlands. It's better they kill them. They're trying to protect their own ancestral land than coming here and going through some of these things that are happening to them and all of that. And a clear picture is what we're seeing on the front page of this paper, and we're seeing where Sheikh Hussein is saying that the North need to look into what they need to do concerning insecurity. And I'd also, we've had countless of meetings being taken, held by the northern governors, what they need to do, how they need to put heads together, synergy that is needed, and all of that. And yet, it seems as if each of the meeting, we're yet to see anything happening. We see what's happening in Niger.
Yeah.
Regarding the issue of minors being bandits and all of that. And I think the government have tried their best to see how they can take charge of that issue of mining and the fact that it's beyond the state governors. So I think this is not just about the northern governors coming together, but what is the federal government doing to make sure that the issue of insecurity is being eradicated, if there is a way we can eradicate it totally. Because I believe we have the antidote to this. I know the government do have the antidote to this, because we've said it a number of times that they cannot outnumber our own security agency. They can't. But then what are some of the measures we have put in place? Because when you visit the IDP camp, you have a clear picture of what really is happening. The way they look malnourished, not being taken care of. You just can't help but shed tears when you go there. So we're looking forward to the government. We have seen it coming in, especially to take care of them. Yet it seems as if it doesn't get to the people. So questions will be, what is the government doing with these aids that are coming in to make sure that these people that are being displaced as a result of this crisis and kidnapping and all of that are well taken care of?
So that the only solution to the problems in the IDP security is these people being able to go back to their normal life, their houses, even if the houses are not there, but going back to an atmosphere that cannot accommodate everybody. Because by virtue of how an IDP camp is designed, is temporary.
Sure.
And then is to host a few number. Imagine a facility, temporary one for 1,000 people hosting 10,000 or double that number or more. At the beginning, there might be a flow of supply, but as time goes on, it's going to reduce because it's not meant to last as long as it has. It's supposed to just be for a very short period of time. There's no much, right? Except if the government, because first of all, the government is not designed to feed anybody, to keep giving relief, It can only do that for a short period of time. It's expected that you go out there, you farm, you work, you get paid, you fend for yourself. There are no plans for these kinds of thing for long term in any budget, in anything. And that's why you have to depend on relief. And there's only but a practical amount of time that the government can be consistent. And let's not forget, even if we have certain organizations stepping in and giving this relief, let's not forget that more and more people keep coming, more than the number. And it's not only, we can talk about UNICEF, we can talk about the United Nations, we can talk about all of these international and organizations and all of that. They are not ultimate, because it's not only in the Northeast that there's conflict in Nigeria. There are other places, and we can also move down to other African countries that are in need of relief, and they are also stretched. The best that the government can do, of course, is not to no longer send relief, but to see how, more importantly, that these people can go back to their life, because that's the only way they can survive. Not more people coming to the IDP camps, because it's not going to work. It means if what was available, imagine if a relief was sent for 10,000 people for a month, and all of a sudden another village community was destroyed, and 3,000 people came to that IDP camp, and the supply was for 10,000 people for a month. Automatically, we're now looking at the period of that relief or whatever aid they got not lasting as it. I think that is the problem. So it's more of the government stopping more internally displaced people from coming to this camp. That is the solution. If not, by virtue of how relief is, there's just little we will continue to see this problem as far as it's concerned. Not to say the government cannot do anything about relief or the needful. We can talk about what is happening in Sokoto. Why is it that somebody will sit down and allow such diversion to happen when these children need it? This is also a problem in this IDP. Sometimes it's not that the reliefs are not coming, but someone is diverting it at the same time. These are all the problems that are being faced. So there's just so much that can be done, but ultimately we will never stop overemphasizing the fact that security should be the number one, so that these people can go out and fend for themselves.
Of course, because I think we've heard where they complain and say they prefer going. In fact, some of them leave the IDP camp, go out to help people, maybe in their farm, raise some funds so that they'll be able to take care of themselves. They prefer to go back to their homes than to stay here. So we look forward to seeing the government doing something about that. Still on the Guardian newspaper, don't destroy PDP. Dele Momodu once as party crisis wasn't. You can find out on page 6. Federal government films as terrorists kill 12 abducted minors in Niger State. As well, we have Tinubu to swear in Kikeku as Ariola retires. Court discharge 6 hashtag NSAS protesters after 4 years. Owandu completes $783 million agri acquisition deal. Knocks for immigration over passports. Fee hike, you can find that on page 3. And we have Omode launches foundation to promote ethnical standards. You can find that in the paper. Chinese firm continues seizure spree with another Nigerian jet in Canada. Data found in the paper, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On New Telegraph, electricity, federal government moves tariff differential to stimulate demand. Grid connections still cheapest, most reliable. You can start with the details on the front page. Investors eye high-yield foreign currency bonds from Nigeria. On insecurity, Abbas frets over rising cases of kidnap for ransom. Women empowerment strategic to economic growth, the First Lady is saying so. BPP has saved Nigeria over 1.7 trillion naira in 14 years, says Bajabia Mila. Details of each statement can be found on page 5. 16 trillion naira needed to complete contract, Mahi is saying. You can find details on page 2. The big story on the paper, reps query loot over alleged 2 billion naira discrepancy in remitter payment. 150 billion naira unapproved budget. Asks Yaba Psychiatric Hospital to account for 422 million naira contract, 50 million naira on staff training. Lagos court discharges acquits 6 hashtag NSAS protesters held since 2020. Alleged terrorism financing, Obi calls for caution in handling Ajero's invitation. Nigeria will be in morgue if Tinubu's misrule continues, a statement from Sam Amadi. Benue APC crisis, a career area factions at war as NWC dissolves SWC. PMS crisis, federal government Jerry can ban crippling MSMEs nationwide. AGF once again subversion of democratic government, and we have a study most supermarket baby food unhealthy. You can find details on page 26, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
You sure you're seeing when we're talking about the issue of the federal government saying no sale of petrol in jerrycans, now we're seeing what is happening here. I know the writer is a bit very tiny, but I managed to read a little where we're seeing here residents with generator tanks observe Virginia at filling station, frozen food sellers and others are lamenting. Of course, without the light, we see that definitely the deep freezer will melt, and then the ice, then we see how fuel station owners dodge the NPRDM punitive action. And we've seen all of that. We've complained about that. So in
Yeah.
as much as the federal government is trying to make sure, okay, those who really need the petrol get it, but then let's not forget there are other people that are all these small and
They
medium
rely on them.
enterprises that need it. Imagine
Yeah.
a woman running a salon. She needs the petrol because she needs to wash her customers' hair and all of that. So we just hope that, just like we're saying, most time we see us trying to solve the problem from the branches. We don't get to the root of the main problem.
Yeah.
And I think this is what is happening. Yes, this selling of jerrycan can just be temporary, because believe you me, black marketers, they need to make market eventually.
They do need
so if they
to.
need to make if they need to go through night vision to get this petrol, they will do that. So I'm just hoping that something needs to be done. Let us have this made available, so we don't have to go through this unnecessary stress and then all of that. I mean, things are becoming worse by the day, but I hope the federal government feels and understand and need to do something about it.
We talked about how tricycle riders will have to rely on these jerry can sellers for quick access so that they can run their business for the day. You need to see the queue in some of the fuel station. Is massive, it's long, it's you can't just imagine it. Even here on the plateau, and imagine bigger cities, what they are going through and all of that. And there are people that rely on it. We see residents. So these are people, it's not even only business owners. We have direct consumers, that residents that are not having electricity as it should. They needed to power their houses and do what is expected of them to do. Food stuff, even if not for a business, there are people that their goods will perish in their refrigerators if there's no electricity and all of that. This is how the Nigerian government operates. Just as you said, Stella, they don't go to the root. We have a problem. Black market, whether we like it or not, is a business structure.
True.
Even if it's called black, even if it is unofficial, official or not, it is a business structure that has, it is also AMSME, as far as I'm concerned. When it comes to petrol distribution, it has existed. It makes it available. Just as you said, the salon is that, why would I go to a fuel station just to get something for I pass my neighbor just to dry somebody's hair, all of that. They don't go to the queue because this other business structure is existing for small business owners to also rely on it for quick and easy access to petrol supply and all of that. So when you come and cut it, you're affecting every other business. And oftentimes, this is the government we have that put things out there without really, really looking in-depthly and going about how to implement it in a way that businesses will not be affected. With all the policies at the top and even with small policies at this, you can see a reflection of decisions that are not thought through properly and thoroughly. If you want to start cutting black market supply, you're not supposed to seize it immediately. There's already a scarcity ongoing. It's already bad timing. When there is no scarcity, then you begin to cut down black market supply gradually, and then, but we always have this problem when it comes to implementing anything. Even as good as it might be, we can't say black market is supposed to thrive. No, there's exploitation in that market also, and it needs to be controlled. But when you're taking it down, how are you doing it? Is that the expenses of small businesses that needed to thrive? Or are you just thinking of doing what you want to do as a government because you want to do regardless of the consequences at on the other side?
And just imagine, because this black market will be out of market if
they will
don't
be
sell eventually.
also.
Just like you said, they're also a business
They are
structure.
also a
We
business,
can't just
yeah.
disrupt the chain just
True.
like that. Well, before we continue with the paper review, let's take a time and let you go through the stories. And when we come back, we'll continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
The gospel of Jesus Christ is our Heavenly Father's plan for the happiness and salvation of His children. Equa Television International shares the gospel of Jesus Christ because the world must come to the realization of the power in the atonement of sin through the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. sharing with the world the message of hope that can clean anyone from sin to enjoy the peace that is in Him. Equa Television International is live 24/7, preaching the message of salvation and truth to the world. Pray for Equa TV. Support Equa TV. Be part of Equa TV. Keep watching Equa Television International.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies. We have been looking at some of the top stories on the top paper, among which we're seeing that today the new Chief Justice of Nigeria will be sworn in. As we had Ariwola, yesterday he retires as the Chief Justice of Nigeria. So these are not the stories as well. We're looking at the issue of kidnapping, federal government not being happy with the killing of the monarch in Sokoto State, amidst many other stories on the paper. So please do well to drop your own views. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's take a look at the first newspaper. Attorney General of the Federation warns any undemocratic move against Tinubu's government is treason. You can read detail in the paper. Nnamdi Kanu's lawyer urged Tinubu to open talks with IPOP leader. Over 2,100 arrested in the hashtag End Bad Governance protests. Falana calls for legal support. Philip Shaibu saying, I remain legitimate Edo deputy governor, coming from Umar Bayo. You can find that in the paper. Wando PLC finalized $783 million acquisition of Nigerian Agrip Oil Company. The big story in Niger, Zamfara hit hard. 13 farmers killed, over 10 kidnapped bandits, 650 million naira ransom. You can read that in the paper. Tinubu to Swezi Kikeri Eku as the Chief Justice of Nigeria today as Ariwola retires. After 4 years in detention, Lagos court convict released 6 hashtag NSAS protesters. Detail found in the paper. We have Zongshan Fonchain seized another $57 million Nigerian private jet in Canada. You can read that in the paper. We have the picture story where we can see the Delta State Governor Sharif welcomes Senator Oluremi Tinubu, the First Lady of Nigeria, at the State Government House in Asaba on Thursday for the official launch of the Renew Hope Initiative Economic Empowerment Program for Women Petty Traders. And that's all on First News newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, Owando completes $783 million Nigerian Agrip Oil Company acquisition deal. As NNPC says, Owando Wale Tinubu have no equity in OVH. ACPC warns against undermining Supreme Court judgment on local government autonomy. The big story on the paper, Niger killings, federal government orders security agencies to track foreign miners funding banditry. Bans mining in Shiroro site, vows to avenge killing of 12 miners. And we have a statement, those who think they can invade villages, kill innocent people to make way for illegal mining of their rich minerals will be shocked to discover that it is no longer business as usual. With the mining marshals working with the intelligence community, we shall fish out those hoodlums and put their hands to the fire. Details can be found on page 3. Minister mulls differential tariffs to stimulate demand in the power sector, says grid connection cheapest and most reliable. Adeleke issues directives on food inflation, fuel prices, people's welfare. Ariola bows out as CGN signs of new Supreme Court rules. AGF cautions against subversion of democratic government. Tinubu to swear in Kekere Okun as CGN today. That's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On Daily News Herb newspaper, NGX rate Fidelity Bank highest in corporate governance. You can find that in the paper. And we have the big story, $70 million arbitration award. Chinese company confiscate $57 million luxury jet federal government seized from the ex-minister. Canadian authorities recently handed over aircraft change of custody paperwork to Chinese firm. Aircraft first seized from Etete in 2016. You can find that in the paper. How presidency will determine 2025 budget allocation, coming from Bajapian Media. Tinubu to swear in the Justice Kekere Ekua, the Chief Justice of Nigeria today. Tinubu has no interest in Rwanda acquisition, says NNPCL. No new projects for 2025, says Works Minister. And we have Chief Justice of Nigeria Ariwola retires, sign off on new Supreme Court rules. Nigerian woman gave birth to baby girl abroad, flight to Brazil. I think that Nigerian woman gives birth to baby girl abroad and then flight to Brazil. You can find that in the paper. Ex-Lagos police spokesperson needs 25 million naira for kidney transplants. Bandits kidnap 10 villagers in Zamfara, demand 50 million naira ransom. 9 dead in migrant boat accident on Sabia-Botan border river. This is coming from an official. And coming from the EFCC, local international security agency hunting for Yahaya Bello, says the ex-Kogi governor must be brought to justice. And the last story on the paper, federal government won't tolerate subversive activities. Attorney General of the Federation, Fabemi, warns. And that's all on Daily News Herb newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, Wando PLC acquires Nigerian Agip Oil Company for $783 million. Chelsea take control in Conference League with 2-0 win over Savite. Details can be found on page 20. OVH acquisition, NNPC Limited fires back at Atiku, says President Tinubu. Wale Tinubu have no interest. Chinese firm Zhongshan seizes another $57 million Nigerian jet in Canada. Nigeria's aviation sector needs strategic investment to reach full potential, says Minister. The big story on the paper, new era begins at Supreme Court. Kekere Okun steps in as Ariola bows out. Tinubu returns from France to swear in Kekere Okun as CGN urges Nigerian judiciary to live up to its constitutional mandate. NBA seeks judicial improvement to justify increased salaries. Court discharges 6 #EndSARS participants. First Lady empowers 37,000 petty traders with 1.85 billion naira. On the 555 million naira fine, Fidelity Bank debunks data breach allegation. Chidinma Adesina lands in Nigeria for Miss Universe pageant. More details can be found on page 19. Still at the book launch of the retired Chief Justice of Nigeria, Ariola, Judging with Justice. That is the book title, happening yesterday in Abuja, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty, oil companies reject mandate to sell crude to Dangote. Nigeria gradually turning to Tinubu's private business. This is coming from Atiku. New presidential jet is 15 years old. Nigeria is the third user. This is coming from an investigation. And the big story, President Tinubu approves 10 billion naira to fast-track digital switch over from analog TV broadcasting, coming from the DGMBC. President Bola Tinubu has approved the 10 billion naira to fast-track the process of achieving digital switchover, that is the DSO, in the country. You can find detail of that in the paper. Army to probe killing of civilians and 100 cattle in Kaduna. Terrorism Act, Tinubu vows to remove threat and protect all. Chinese investors reposes another $57 million Nigerian jet in Canada. Crude oil drilling exploration in North on course. This is coming from NMPCL, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On this day newspaper, Owando completes $783 million acquisition of any subsidiary. Nigerian Agib Oil Company pledges to optimize assets to boost Nigeria's oil output. Chike Oge utilizes new Asaba designate, says he was made to be king. Bajabiamila is saying State House 2025 budget for agencies will be based on needs assessment. Dangote Oil Refinery increasingly skipping U.S. crude for local supply, report from Bloomberg. Facilities set to start petrol output in September, IRR says. More details can be found on page 5. The big story on the paper, Ariola's leadership in judiciary impactful, enrich nations jurisprudence. Statement from Tinubu says his epitome of hard work, selfless service. Swears in Kekere Kun today, urges her to carry on baton passed by predecessor. Retires CJN seeks implementation of Justice Summit's decisions. Advise governors to obey Supreme Court judgment on local government autonomy. Fabemi tells state ages. Picture story still showing the big win as Owando seals Agib deal, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
Alright, let's take a look at the Business Day newspaper, where we have federal government prescription can't cure Japa fever. Talking about the healthcare professionals that are leaving Nigeria in droves despite the federal government effort to retain them. This is what the Business Day was able to find. So you can find that about 16,000 doctors have existed Nigeria rather in the last 5 years. So we've lost about 16,000 of our Nigerian doctors to other countries. You can do well to find more. About 75 nurses and midwives as well has left Nigeria within that same period, either to the United States, Europe, Asia, according to the National Association of the Nigerian Nurses and Midwives. So you can read more detail of that on page 31. Still on Business Day newspaper, cost of living crisis seizes as prices of gari, potato, tomatoes drop. You can find that on page 31. Wine intake fails to 5-year low on inflation, empty wallet. Nigeria sells 384 billion naira T-bills as DMO favors bond. Mpox spread across Africa, heighten Nigerians' risks amid vaccine shortage. You can read detail of that in the paper, and that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, the big story, Super Eagles pocket 6.3 billion naira as CAF finally shares AFCON 2023 prize money. Mbappe's world best. Statement from Palmer. Details can be found at the back page. Haaland is saying, I'm in good shape. Details can be found on page 2. I'm enjoying every moment with Messi. Don't come back, pig. Atletico Madrid fans react to Joao Felix Chelsea move. Gallagher giving incredible unveiling. Details can be found on page 3. Ex-champ warns Fury ahead of Usyk rematch. Napoli-Chelsea meet over Lukaku's future. Rafael 100% committed to Milan, the club CEO is saying. Iheanacho opens up on AFCON regret. Bellingham, my love for Lookman. Olaina gets new rival at Nottingham Forest. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all news on Sporting Spawn newspaper.
Well, thank you so much, Richard, for doing this.
Welcome, Sele.
As well, thank you to our viewers. Thank you to the entire production crew for making this program a success. Until we come your way again next week, do have a blessed weekend ahead.